On my elementary school report cards, there were always comments next to my grades. They would read things like kind, talkative, friendly, maybe too talkative, and curious. They said I would ask a lot of questions, which, when brought to 8-year-old me's attention, confused me because those very questions they mentioned were always left unanswered or given superficial responses. Every question I asked as a young person was met with a smile or a nod, but never words. That made me feel acknowledged and noticed, but not considered. Then comes the transitional sixth grade. A teacher asked me to save my questions, never specified for who or where to take them to, and it felt like a big, fat shut up to my face. And I'm not gonna lie, at first I felt discouraged. I almost stopped asking questions, I almost stayed silent. But then I was infuriated. My curiosity was suppressed and my questions were silenced. In the middle school history classes that let me ask questions, which thank you, Mr. Stafford and Ms. Graham, I discovered something. There were people before me who faced the same thing. There were people before me who asked questions and were silenced, and that there were people to this day that are still silenced for asking questions. Now, I want you to think of an oppressive system, any throughout history. Considering our country's education, you probably thought of America's Jim Crow era or the British 13 colonies. Revolutions from both did not come out of nowhere. They started with asking questions. And the silencing that came from both did not come out of nowhere too. It came in suppression of those questions. Silencing questions can make people feel less than, can make people's curiosity suppressed, and can make people feel all the more less. And within those times of history, people have consistently been silenced because systems of oppression have feared curiosity. When curiosity questions powers of oppression and systems of oppression, then comes the people in control, they feel powerless. Now, in the world of literature, questions are considered highly valid and effective. Frederick Douglass, a revolutionary literary, asked why slaves couldn't read. But once his eyes met the words of the paper, he realized its power. Knowledge came from sources, those words. Knowledge sourced these ideas, and these ideas gave birth to the liberation from slavery. Following that, slavery silenced many revolutionaries and many abolitionists. Furthermore, Douglass was not alone in this. As James Baldwin questioned, he did not simply write about America, he questioned the Constitution. Frederick Douglass and James Baldwin both questioned America's systems of oppression. Baldwin asked, "Who is this we?" in response to the "we, the people of the Constitution." And in this, he questioned the usage of "we" due to its hypocrisy in excluding so many. Similarly, Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish did the same thing but with poetry. He asked and wrote, "Where do we go after the last horizons, and where do we go after the last skies?" He questioned his people's occupation and the occupation that pushed his people to the edges of their homeland. Douglass, Baldwin, and Darwish all taught us one thing: the importance of curiosity throughout history. And similarly, that importance is the reason that we have change. Now, you might think that this change is historical, it doesn't matter to this day, but it is all the more relevant. If book bans are happening and limiting education, we should be asking why. If major censorship is limiting media and news, we should be asking why. And when elementary to university curriculums are changing, we should be asking why. This isn't about politics, but the human right to be able to ask why and ask questions. Now, what happens if we don't ask questions? If we just stayed silent? Then, curiosity suppressed. Injustice becomes normal, violence becomes invisible, and lies rewrite history. And I've seen this myself with curriculums overriding indigenous people's history, and moreover, the bystander effect. The bystander effect is when a wrong is being committed in front of people and people stay silent. They do not question or speak against the wrong that is being committed. And in that moment, that wrong is normalized. And that taught me one thing: power loves silence, because without resistance, without resistance, power can be anything and do anything that it wants. And that silence isn't exclusive. In the workplace, many people fear to question inequality out of fear for their jobs. In the classroom, people fear to question the curriculum out of fear for their grades. And in politics, people fear to question corruption out of fear because that's the way it is. Now, these things all show us something, in that we are not powerless. And that brings the question of, what about us, the me and the you? What about us, ordinary people? We don't write laws, we don't enact change. All we can do is use our voices. That means we are all the more powerful and that we are not voiceless. From this, we can learn that by questioning these systems, we can start to enact change, because revolutions do not start out of nowhere. These revolutionaries like Douglas, Baldwin, and Darwish were not simply handed a guide to resistance, they had to make their own through questions. So ask why. Ask in your classroom, your workplace, your community, and anywhere else. Ask even when your voice shakes. I was once told to save my questions. History has taught us the dangers of abiding by that silence. A question is not merely language, is not merely just a word, is not merely just a sentence. Questions opens the door to truth, questions defend our freedom, and questions protect our lives. When we start to ask the right questions, we start to change the world. Thank you.